launched me on this quest, this realization that there's these parallel tracks. You have the traditional mainstream story or version of history and some of history's greatest figures, and then you have the real story, the parallel story, the mystery or esoteric track. And I jumped tracks, went over onto that side looking for these mysteries, and haven't stopped since.
And you are in the middle of the Bible Belt as we speak.
I am in the buckle of the Bible Belt, Nashville, Tennessee. That's right. More Bibles come out of Nashville than anywhere, including Jerusalem or Rome. It is the center for the Word on the planet. It's kind of remarkable, but it's also the only city in the world, to my knowledge, that has copies or replicas of two pagan temples from the ancient world, one being Pallas Athena's Parthenon, which we have a scale replica of the Parthenon, accurate to 1/8 of an inch, including a 42-foot tall statue, the tallest indoor statue in the Western world, a statue of Pallas Athena, completely covered in gold. And then we have at the base of our Capitol this 2,200-foot long magician's rod that's laid out and growing on 19 acres that uses all this ancient Egyptian temple technology to create just a magnificent park. I call it Stargate Park because it literally is it's a portal of some kind. It's extraordinary.
You talk about portals and stargates. To me, these were terms of science fiction in the past, but according to you, they are not. Tell us what your definition of a stargate is, and is this the same as a portal or a wormhole?
Yeah, great question. I define a stargate on 3 different levels. First, a stargate is the connection from the heart of one sun or star to another star or star system. A stargate then on Earth is a place on Earth, a piece of real estate where the energy from a star or star system saturates the ground and identifies that place with that particular star system. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a very good example of that. The third definition of a stargate is that it's literally a portal, a transportation portal. A traversable wormhole is a connecting link from between these star systems, or perhaps from a planet to another planet. So yes, a portal, a wormhole, a stargate, all those terms are interchangeable. And in fact, the ancient record is loaded with references specifically to gates to the stars. The pyramid texts of ancient Egypt explicitly describe the gods coming and going through gateways or portals. The artwork in the temples of ancient Egypt are explicit in this recognition or understanding that the ancient gods were light beings who traversed the stars and what they referred to as ships of eternity, or the arc of the millions of years. And when you look at their depictions of the ship of eternity or the arc of the millions of years, it's a U-shaped boat with lotus blossoms on either side that resemble identically the way modern science portrays a wormhole. And it was based on that similarity that provoked me to say, well, wait a minute, could it be that the ancients knew all about this, as their texts suggest and their artwork suggests as well, but they didn't call it a stargate or a wormhole, they called it the ship of eternity. So that's the kind of the basis for this hypothesis or theory, if you will, that the ancients knew all about stargates and portals and left us a huge legacy for us to rediscover.
If this is reality, who is keeping the secret? And is it the military-industrial complex? And if so, are they using it?
That's a complicated question. Let me answer it this way. I'm not convinced that the military-industrial complex controls stargates. There's a lot of talk out there that they actually do. Are they seeking the secrets of these stargates? Without question, in my view. And we can talk about why I believe that. But let me just back up just for a second here and recognize that the idea for the traversable wormhole was practically invented by Dr. Carl Sagan, who was writing his novel about First Contact, which he called Contact, which was later made into the movie with Jodie Foster,
right.
And launched the gospel of the Stargate. Both the movie Contact, Sagan's novel, and the TV series Contact, Stargate, are militaristic views of the Stargate, and they fancy or feature the concept of some kind of a technology that can be used to open up a hyperdimensional gateway that might lead to the center of the galaxy in the case of Contact, leads all over the galaxy in the case of Stargate. So is that a possibility? Well, it is, but then when you go back into the ancient world, you notice that every time the gate is referenced, it's always in conjunction, at least to the research that I've done, it's in conjunction with a temple of transformation, a place where humans were transformed into divine beings, pure beings, light beings, preparatory to going through that gate. So they weren't concerned about whether or not humans could go through the gate in our physical form. They seem to have been going into and accessing these gates in more of an ethereal form, in a light body form. They were discarding the body. In a way, they were kind of scanning themselves as what they were doing. The myth of Osiris is a very good one, where he's cut to pieces by his evil brother, and then he's reassembled by his wife, the priestess Isis, at another location. That sounds like a dematerialization event to me. And we can talk about the technology, the spiritual technology that we see on the walls at the Temple of Seti at Abydos that describes this Osiris technology of transformation and what I think of as teleportation. So is the U.S. military using this stuff? I don't have any direct evidence of that. I know people talk about that, but I'm not convinced.
The reason why I ask you is because I know you've looked into this since 1990, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And then in 1998, he wanted to create what you call a Disneyland for the Anunnaki. This is so interesting. Why don't you tell us more about this?
I am very fascinated in the Stargate story of Saddam Hussein. It first came on my radar during the Gulf War, 1991, when your kind of right-winger, if you will, very literal Bible prophecy watchers were noting quite correctly that Saddam Hussein had proclaimed himself the reincarnation of the biblical king Nebuchadnezzar. And he was spending $500 million to rebuild Babylon, which was a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Babylon had to be rebuilt so that it could be destroyed, and then after that, the Lord would return. That's the traditional Christian prophecy relating to Babylon. So the question became, was Saddam Hussein fulfilling this prophecy? And he definitely appeared to be. So I started following Saddam after that. I especially followed him through the art newspapers, the international art newspapers, who were talking about, remember those UN weapons inspectors that were going into Iraq? They were coming out with their pockets filled with ancient Sumerian artifacts, cylinder seals, and other artifacts of great value, and selling them on the black market. And the art people were kind of up in arms about it, saying, hey, these guys are going in for under one pretense, but they're coming out and they're selling Iraq's legacy. So
no wonder they didn't find any weapons of mass destruction.
Well, in my view, these ancient artifacts were the weapons of mass destruction, because what Saddam was doing was going very deep. He was kind of took a cue from Nebuchadnezzar himself, who assembled a massive library in ancient Babylon. And he had Saddam had what was called the Ashurbanipal project. Ashurbanipal was an ancient Iraqi king who claimed that he could read all the texts from before the flood, and had amassed a vast ancient library, including those pre-flood texts. Saddam was trying to duplicate the Ashurbanipal library, and he had the Saddam Hussein School for Cuneiform Studies. He had all of this esoteric stuff going, and what he was really trying to do ultimately was create a tourist attraction. He wanted people to come to Baghdad, learn the real history of the human race. And the problem is that Saddam's history was a little bit more like Zecharia Sitchin's history of the human race than was comfortable for most people. And in my view, if Saddam were successful in revealing this lost ancient knowledge that he was seeking, and I believe actually possessed, it would have been like rolling a stick of dynamite into traditional Western culture.
The Judeo-Christian religion would have been threatened by this, right?
That's right. I mean, this knowledge is the ultimate insider knowledge, and I feel that Saddam knew the effect of it, and felt like he could bring down Judeo-Christian civilization by toppling its sacred cows, its false idols, if you will, and that was certainly part of it. And so I had started reading or researching this in the 90s, began writing more about it around 2001, 2002, and by 2003, I had predicted that if Bush and Cheney won the election in 2000 that we would be in Iraq within 6 months. I was off by a few months, but there was no question to me that they were reading the book of Revelation as a recipe book, and they sought to fulfill that prophecy. And so they were very keen on getting into Babylon as soon as they possibly could. And of course, once we went into Babylon, the first thing they did was make a beeline for the Iraqi National Museum, and lo and behold, it's looted. It's many of the artifacts are taken. Some have returned, and it's exactly what you would expect. That this is exactly the type of knowledge the Bush-Cheney cabal were interested in. The religious conservatives are interested in, and they're most interested in taking this knowledge and withholding it from everybody else, in my view.
The main reason for going to Iraq, many say, is weapons of mass destruction, which is proven to be a fallacy. Others say it was oil. But before they went for the oil, they went to the National Museum. And what I hear is that some of the museum artifacts have been returned, but they're facsimiles or copies. Have you heard that too?
I haven't heard that specifically, but I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean, throughout history, you've always had these regimes and cabals that have sought to grab whatever they can of the national treasures of nations that they invade. And in this particular case, that knowledge is very specific in that it relates directly to these ancient race of god beings. The Anunnaki is one of their names, and their ability to access these portals. And I'm convinced that we, the U.S. government, knew that Saddam was very close to uncovering these secrets and perhaps even utilizing them. I mean, we're talking about the ultimate secrets of the universe, and we're talking about secrets that can be weaponized, and we're talking about control, literally, of space. And I think Saddam knew that. I think he was on top of that. As he viewed himself as the reincarnated Nebuchadnezzar, he sought to duplicate what Nebuchadnezzar had done in his life, and even perhaps to exceed what he had done. He's seeing himself as Nebuchadnezzar and just continuing his mission. And of course, it was a lot of folks, I'm sure, talk about, oh yeah, we went to Iraq for ancient Stargate knowledge and all that kind of thing. And actually, I was the person that broke that story on Coast to Coast. It was kind of a funny story. George and I talk about it very often because I actually got ran off the show because I was talking about it. It was kind of humorous, but it's very important that we recognize what was it that prompted me to think that Saddam was actually accessing Stargates. And the proof to me is, again, this Nebuchadnezzar connection. In the book of Daniel, we learn the story of Nebuchadnezzar and his portal or Stargate. And the story is that he's got this gleaming golden image that he's set up in Babylon that he can't quite get the thing to work. He's got a piece of hardware, but apparently he didn't have the software to make it work. But he knew that the wise men at the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem probably did have that software. So what does he do? He goes and loots and levels the Temple of Solomon, brings the Jews to Babylon and the famous Babylonian captivity. Among them are three wise men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and also Daniel, as well as Ezekiel, who was having all kinds of visions of extraterrestrial beings and phenomenal craft of some kind. And what happens is that Nebuchadnezzar has this fiery furnace that is somehow manifesting or working there in Babylon, and he makes a wager with the three wise men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, that if they can enter into that fiery furnace and come back out, he'll convert to their god. Well, in the story, these three wise men put on their coat, their hat, and their other garments, which I found very strange. If you're going into a fiery furnace, why are you going to put any garments on at all?
Right.
But not only that, but they enter it, and they come back out in pristine condition. And not only are they in pristine condition, they're not alone. The Son of God is with them. Now, when people hear the Son of God, they're thinking, Jesus? It's actually not Jesus. It turns out when you hit the books and look into it, his name was Nabu, the royal one. Nabu was an Anunnaki priest, and in fact, Nebuchadnezzar took his name from Nabu. And Nabu stayed for a while. He came through this portal or gateway, the fiery furnace, and stayed for a while. In fact, they erected massive libraries filled with ancient knowledge that Nabu had delivered to them. And this is the knowledge that I believe Saddam was ultimately seeking. But beyond that knowledge, I think what he was also after was the